Brad thought his life was picture perfect, a loving wife, 2 kids, and a stable career. But when he discovers a trail of secrets revealing his wife Emily's infidelity, his world crumbles. Determined to expose the betrayal and reclaim his dignity, Brad embarks on a path of confrontation and calculated revenge. As their family unravels, Emily pleads for forgiveness, but just as Brad begins to move forward, an unforeseen tragedy shatters their lives in a way neither could have imagined. A gripping tale of love, betrayal, and loss that explores the thin line between justice and redemption. The faint hum of Emily's laughter used to be my favorite sound, echoing through our home like a melody meant just for me. But that was before the doubt crept in, before the quiet became suffocating and the air felt heavy with unspoken truths. I'm Brad, 41, a software developer with a knack for unraveling puzzles, except, it seems, for the one that became my marriage. Emily was everything I wasn't: vibrant, ambitious, magnetic. Her rise at her PR firm had been meteoric, filled with accolades and cross-country travel. I admired her. Hell, I envied her. Together, we built a life that felt like a success story: 2 kids, Madison and Liam, a home with a manicured lawn, and a calendar filled with PTA meetings and soccer games. From the outside, we were the family people envied. On the inside, though, something had shifted. I just didn't know what. It began subtly, the way cracks in a foundation appear invisible until it's too late. Emily started coming home later, brushing off my questions with breezy explanations about work dinners and last-minute client meetings. I wanted to believe her, and for a while, I did. But late nights became more frequent. Her phone never left her side, and her once effortless affection for me started to feel rehearsed, as if she were ticking off boxes on a chore list. One evening, as we sat across from each other at the dinner table, Madison and Liam's laughter filling the air, Emily looked through me. Not at me, not into me, but through me, like I was a ghost at her table. My chest tightened. I laughed along with the kids, masking the hollowness inside. Later, as I loaded the dishwasher, I asked, "Everything okay? You've seemed distracted." She turned, her smile quick but forced. "It's just work stress, Brad. You know how it is." I nodded, but her words lingered. Work stress. Was that what this was? I told myself to let it go. We'd been married for 13 years. Surely, people in long-term marriages hit phases like this. It was normal, wasn't it? The turning point came on a Wednesday evening, one of those mundane nights that blend into the background of life. Emily was at a work dinner, and the kids were asleep. I was in the den, half watching a rerun of The Office while fiddling with my laptop. A notification popped up. Her email was still logged into the browser. I hesitated. We trusted each other. Snooping would only erode that trust. But curiosity won out, as it often does. The first emails I found were innocuous, subject lines about client meetings and campaign pitches. Then, one caught my eye: "Can't wait for tomorrow night." The sender was Patrick, CFO. My pulse quickened as I clicked it open. "Last night was amazing. Let's plan another work dinner soon. Same place." I stared at the screen, my mind struggling to process the words. Amazing? Work dinner. Was I reading too much into this? Maybe it was innocent. Maybe, no. My gut told me otherwise, a sensation as sharp as a blade slicing through my chest. I scrolled up, finding more emails, each one more damning than the last. They joked, flirted, referenced shared moments that didn't belong to me. The room seemed to spin as I closed the laptop. My hands were shaking, my breathing uneven. It couldn't be true. Emily wouldn't do this to me, to our family. But the evidence was there, staring back at me in bold black and white. That night, I couldn't sleep. Emily came home late, her face flushed and her laugh too loud as she tiptoed into the bedroom. I pretended to be asleep, listening as she showered and climbed into bed beside me. Her presence, once comforting, now felt like a lie pressing against my back. The next morning, I resolved to find the truth. It wasn't enough to suspect. I needed certainty, something irrefutable. I started small, noting her work schedule and the times she claimed to be out. I paid closer attention to her phone, watching as notifications from Patrick popped up with increasing frequency. But the breaking point came when I found the hotel booking. She'd told me she was staying overnight for a work retreat, a meeting too far from home to commute. The confirmation email said otherwise, a single room, booked in her name, at a boutique hotel downtown. My heart hammered in my chest as I stared at the screen. There was no work retreat. This was a rendezvous. I sat in my car that evening, gripping the steering wheel, the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. I thought about our kids, about the life we'd built. What would happen if this came to light? Would it destroy them? Could I look them in the eyes and explain why their mother wasn't who we thought she was? The questions haunted me, but they didn't stop me. That night, while Emily was in the shower, I took the next step. I reached out to a private investigator. If she was lying to me, I needed to know the extent of it. And if I confronted her, I needed more than suspicions, I needed proof. The days that followed were excruciating. Every time Emily kissed me goodbye or texted me from work, I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of my knowledge. The PI sent regular updates, photos of Emily and Patrick meeting at cafes, walking hand in hand, laughing as if the world belonged to them. The images burned into my mind, each one a dagger to the heart. Finally, the PI delivered the final blow. A folder filled with photographs, time-stamped and undeniable. The last picture showed Emily and Patrick sharing a kiss under a street lamp, their silhouettes bathed in golden light. My hand trembled as I held the photo. This was it. The truth I'd been dreading but couldn't ignore. I had my proof. Now, I had to decide what to do with it. I stared at the photo for what felt like an eternity, the image of Emily and Patrick frozen in my hands like a still frame from a movie I didn't want to watch. My mind raced with questions, each one more desperate than the last. How had I missed this? Was every smile she'd given me a lie? Was I complicit in my own betrayal by being too trusting, too naive? The folder lay open on the coffee table, its contents spilling out like a confession I never asked for. The PI's notes were meticulous, recounting dinners, drinks, and shared hotel stays. Each detail was a nail in the coffin of our marriage. My hands trembled as I tucked the papers back inside the folder. I needed to keep my composure. Exploding now would give her the upper hand. I had to be strategic, measured. That evening, Emily came home late again. She walked through the door with the same breezy confidence that had once endeared her to me. Long day, she sighed, dropping her bag by the couch and kicking off her heels. Patrick's a slave driver. Patrick. The name made my stomach churn. She smiled at me, oblivious to the storm brewing in my chest, and leaned in for a kiss. Her lips brushed mine, but all I could taste was deceit. "You okay?" she asked, her head tilted in concern. "Just tired," I lied, turning away to hide the anger simmering beneath the surface. I spent the next few days preparing. I wasn't impulsive by nature, and if I was going to confront her, I needed everything in place. I consulted a lawyer, a sharp woman named Claire who didn't flinch as I laid out my case. "This is solid evidence," she said, flipping through the folder. "You'll have the upper hand in divorce proceedings, especially if you want custody of the kids." Custody. The word hit me like a freight train. Madison and Liam didn't deserve this. They adored their mother, and despite everything, I didn't want to tear their lives apart. But staying silent wasn't an option either. I had to act, for my sanity and theirs. Claire helped me draft a plan. I opened a separate bank account and began discreetly transferring funds. I arranged temporary housing with a friend who had a guest house just outside town. I even started documenting my interactions with Emily, noting her absences and behavior in case I needed to defend my case later. Then came our anniversary. I chose the date deliberately. If she wanted to celebrate the illusion of our marriage, I'd use the occasion to dismantle it. I booked a table at her favorite restaurant, a cozy Italian place where we'd celebrated birthdays and anniversaries in happier times. Emily was thrilled. "You're so sweet," she said, kissing my cheek as she got ready. "I've been looking forward to this all week." So had I. She wore a sleek black dress that clung to her curves, the same dress she'd worn on our 10th anniversary. The sight of her stirred something in me, anger, betrayal, sadness. It was hard to separate the emotions, and harder still to remember the love I once felt for her. At the restaurant, we made small talk over wine and antipasti. Emily was animated, her laughter filling the air like music. For a moment, I almost forgot. Almost. But then she reached for her phone, the screen lighting up with a message from Patrick. She quickly flipped it over, but not before I caught the name. "You've been texting him a lot lately," I said, keeping my tone light. She blinked, her smile faltering. "Who?" "Patrick. Seems like you two are pretty close." She hesitated, her eyes darting to her wine glass. "We work together, Brad. It's not unusual." "No, I suppose it's not." I let the silence stretch, watching as unease crept across her face. After dinner, I handed her the envelope. "I have a gift for you," I said, sliding it across the table. Her eyes lit up with curiosity as she opened it. But as she pulled out the photos, her expression changed. Shock, then panic, then something else, anger. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice low but sharp. "You tell me," I replied, leaning back in my chair. She flipped through the photos, her hands trembling. I can explain." "Don't bother." My voice was cold, detached. "I've seen enough." Her composure cracked. "Brad, it's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think, Emily. Don't insult me by pretending otherwise." She stared at me, her eyes wide with fear. For the first time, she seemed to realize the gravity of the situation. "Please," she whispered. "Let's talk about this." "I don't think there's anything left to talk about." I signaled for the check, leaving her to sit in stunned silence. When we got home, I handed her a second envelope, a formal notice of separation. Her tears began almost immediately, streaming down her face as she begged me to reconsider. "Brad, I love you. I swear I do." Funny way of showing it. "It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen." "A mistake is forgetting your anniversary," I said, my voice hard. This was a choice." I walked away, leaving her sobbing in the living room. Upstairs, I locked the bedroom door and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. The anger that had sustained me for weeks was fading, replaced by an emptiness I couldn't shake. I'd done what I had to, but it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like the end of everything I'd ever believed in. The next morning, Emily was gone. Her car was missing from the driveway, and a hastily scrawled note sat on the kitchen counter. "I need time to think. Please don't tell the kids yet. I'll be back tonight." I crumpled the note in my hand and tossed it in the trash. She could have all the time she needed. As far as I was concerned, she'd already made her choice. Now it was my turn to make mine. Emily didn't come back that night. I sat in the living room, staring at the blank TV screen, her absence both a relief and a reminder of how far we'd fallen. The house was eerily silent, the kids at my sister's place for the weekend. It was supposed to give Emily and me time for our anniversary, but now it just felt like an empty shell. My phone buzzed. A message from her. I'm staying with a friend for a few days. I need space to process everything. Please, Brad, don't make any decisions yet. I love you. Let's talk. I tossed the phone onto the coffee table, her words meaningless now. Every "I love you" was a mockery of the trust she'd shattered. Talking wouldn't change the images burned into my memory or the weight of betrayal pressing on my chest. The weekend passed in a haze. I busied myself with chores, anything to avoid sitting still and letting my thoughts spiral. When Madison and Liam came home on Sunday, I hugged them tighter than usual, grateful for their laughter and innocence. They didn't notice the strained smile on my face or the way my eyes darted to the door every time the sound of a car drifted through the window. Emily returned Monday evening. She walked in like a ghost, her face pale and her eyes swollen from crying. I was at the dining table, sorting through mail, when she set her bag down and stood hesitantly in the doorway. "Brad," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't look up. "The kids are upstairs." Her shoulders sagged. "We need to talk. I don't think there's much left to say." "Please," she pleaded, stepping closer. "I know I've hurt you, but we can work through this. For the kids, for us." I finally met her gaze, and for a moment, I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. But that woman was a stranger now, and I couldn't reconcile the image with the person standing before me. "You want to work through this?" I asked, my tone sharp. "You think we can just sweep this under the rug and go back to normal?" "No," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "Fix this? Emily, you've been lying to me for months. Maybe longer. You betrayed me, our family. This isn't something you can fix with an apology and a promise." Tears streamed down her face, but I felt no sympathy. "I made a mistake," she sobbed. "I got caught up in something I didn't know how to stop." "Don't call it a mistake," I snapped. "Mistakes happen once. This was a series of choices. Every text, every meeting, every night in that hotel room, you chose this. Over and over." She crumpled into a chair, her hands covering her face. "I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything," I replied coldly. "Just pack a bag and leave." Her head shot up, her eyes wide with panic. "You can't mean that." "I mean every word," I said, standing. "You've already broken this marriage. The least you can do is leave with what little dignity you have left." Emily didn't move at first, her chest heaving with sobs. Finally, she rose and shuffled upstairs. I heard her packing, the sound of zippers and drawers opening and closing. When she came back down, she hesitated at the door. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For everything." I didn't respond, and after a moment, she walked out, the door clicking shut behind her. I sat down heavily, the weight of the confrontation pressing down on me. For the first time, I felt a sliver of relief. The house was mine again, free of her lies and deceit. But the relief was fleeting. The days that followed were a blur of paperwork, meetings with Claire, and awkward conversations with the kids. Madison and Liam were confused, their questions piercing my heart every time. "Where's Mom? Is she coming back? Are you mad at her?" I gave them the most age-appropriate answers I could. "Mom needs some time to herself right now. She'll still see you, but we're going to figure out what's best for everyone." It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the full truth either. They didn't need to know the details, not yet. Emily tried to contact me several times, leaving voicemails and sending long, rambling texts about how much she regretted everything. She wanted to meet, to explain, to plead her case. I ignored them all, focusing instead on building a new routine for the kids and me. Then came the final blow. One afternoon, while sorting through bills, I found a credit card statement addressed to Emily. She hadn't bothered to change her address yet. At first, I was going to toss it, but curiosity got the better of me. As I scanned the charges, my stomach turned. Dinners at high-end restaurants, hotel bookings, a jewelry store, all during the month she'd claimed to be working late or traveling for business. The most recent charge was just last week, a $1,200 purchase at a boutique shop downtown. I didn't need to guess who it was for. My hands shook as I set the statement down. This wasn't just a betrayal of trust, it was a mockery of the life we'd built together. I'd been working overtime to give her and the kids the life they deserved, and she'd used that money to fund her affair. That evening, I called Claire. "I'm ready," I told her. "File the divorce papers." The next morning, I texted Emily. "The papers are being filed. Claire will contact you with the details." Her reply came almost immediately, "Please, Brad. Let's talk. Don't do this. I'll do anything." But I was done talking. My decision was made. I filed the divorce papers on a gray, rainy morning. The clouds hung low, mirroring the heaviness in my chest. I told myself I was doing the right thing, for me, for Madison and Liam. Emily's betrayal had left me no choice. But as I walked out of Claire's office, the drizzle soaking through my jacket, I couldn't shake the feeling that something irrevocable was slipping away. Emily moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. The kids visited her on weekends, though their excitement dulled with time. They didn't say it outright, but I could tell they felt the fracture in our family, the unspoken truth that things would never be the same. I threw myself into routine, work, soccer practice, making dinner. The hum of daily life dulled the pain, though it never fully disappeared. I avoided the places Emily and I used to frequent. Even simple things, like a song on the radio or the scent of her favorite shampoo, could send me spiraling into memories I tried to bury. One evening, weeks after the papers were filed, I was sitting in the kitchen, helping Madison with her math homework. Liam was playing with his Lego set in the living room, his laughter filling the space. For a moment, I felt normal, like we were going to be okay. The doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door to find Emily standing there, rain dripping from her hair and coat. Her eyes were hollow, rimmed with exhaustion. She held an envelope in her hands. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice colder than I intended. "I needed to see you," she said softly, her gaze darting past me toward the warmth of the house. "Can we talk? Please." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to slam the door and walk away, but something in her eyes stopped me. Reluctantly, I stepped aside, letting her in. The kids ran to her, their faces lighting up as they hugged her tightly. She smiled weakly, running her fingers through their hair. "Hey, my loves," she whispered. "Go back to what you were doing. I need to talk to Daddy for a minute." They obeyed, though I could see the confusion in their eyes. Emily followed me into the kitchen, setting the envelope on the table. She didn't sit down. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," she began, her voice trembling. "For everything. For what I did to you, to us. I know I can't undo it, but I need you to know how much I regret it." I folded my arms, keeping my expression neutral. "Is that all?" "No," she glanced down at the envelope, then back at me. "There's something else. Something I need to tell you." "What now?" I asked, my patience wearing thin. She hesitated, her hands twisting together. "I've been feeling off lately. Tired, dizzy. I thought it was just stress, but," she trailed off, her voice breaking. My stomach sank. "But what?" "I saw a doctor," she said, her words tumbling out in a rush. "They ran some tests. Brad, it's cancer." The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. "What are you talking about?" "It's advanced," she said, tears streaming down her face. Stage 4. They found it too late. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what she was saying. Emily, so full of life, so vibrant, how could this be possible? I didn't know how to tell you, she continued, her voice barely audible. I thought maybe you'd hate me so much, you wouldn't care. Jesus, Emily, I whispered, sinking into a chair. Why didn't you say something sooner? I didn't want to burden you, she said, wiping her eyes. I've already hurt you enough. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The rain pounded against the windows, the only sound in the heavy silence. What now? I finally asked, my voice hoarse. She shook her head. I don't know. The doctors are talking about palliative care, maybe a clinical trial. But it's not good, Brad. I felt a wave of guilt crash over me, drowning the anger I'd clung to for weeks. Whatever Emily had done, she didn't deserve this. No one did. The kids came back into the kitchen, their laughter piercing the somber air. Emily smiled at them, though her eyes were filled with sorrow. I love you both so much, she said, pulling them into a hug. Later that night, after Emily left, I sat in the darkened living room, staring at nothing. The anger and betrayal that had consumed me felt meaningless now. All I could think about was the time we'd wasted, the moments we'd never get back. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to cling to the bitterness that had fueled me. But in that moment, all I felt was an aching sadness, for her, for me, for the life we'd built and the future we'd never see. Over the weeks that followed, I tried to support her as best I could. I took her to appointments, helped with the kids, and tried to be the person she needed, even if I wasn't sure I could forgive her. One rainy morning, much like the day she'd come to the door, the phone rang. It was the hospital. Emily had passed away overnight, peacefully, they said. I sat on the edge of the bed, the receiver still in my hand, and wept for the woman I'd loved, the mistakes we'd made, and the tragedy of too little, too late.